It's been said that those who don't learn the lessons from history are bound to repeat them. And so I want to share with you I think, a really important lesson from history that we as Christians need to remember. It was just after World War II. Japan had just lost the war, and understand that from the Japanese perspective, they saw their emperor as a god of sorts. And so here they had just lost the war in a big way. And so they were reeling. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to think. They didn't know what to believe. And so there is this wide open field for harvest, if you will. And lots of organizations, Christian organizations, sent missionaries in there to take the gospel. But most of them were not cooperating with one another. And some of them, honestly, were openly antagonistic toward one another. And so think about this from the Japanese people's perspective. Here are these various organizations who all say they're bringing a message of love, and yet they're fighting against one another. And as a result, the gospel never took hold. I think that's a shame. See, it reminds me of Jesus' prayer in John 17. Two different times in that prayer, Jesus says, in essence, the same thing. He says, Father, make them one, that the world may believe that you have sent me. So when the world sees us as one, then they're going to believe that Jesus was sent by the Father. But the converse is also true. If they don't see us as one, then they're not going to believe that he was sent by the Father. Let me read you an amazing quote that I came across recently. It says this: "A most powerfully convincing mark of the truth of the gospel is when Christian believers are united in love across the barriers of the world's inveterate divisions. Barriers of race, color, gender, social class, economic privilege, or political alignment. However, few things so destroy our testimony as when Christians mirror and amplify the very same divisions among themselves." Wow, what a statement. And that's really what happened there in Japan. See, what we need to recognize as believers is that Jesus' death and resurrection reconciles us to one another. It's really part of the gospel message. In Ephesians chapter 2, Paul writes this, beginning in verse 13. "Now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made us both one, and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, that he might create in himself one new man in place of the two, so making peace, and might reconcile us both to God in one body through the cross, thereby killing the hostility." So if you understand what Paul is writing there, he's saying that it's part of the gospel message, that Jesus died and rose again, yes, to reconcile us to the Father, but he also died and rose again to reconcile us to one another. And so if we miss that second part, we're missing part of the gospel. And that's what happened in Japan. See, Jesus didn't die and rise from the grave with the hope that perhaps we might be one. No, it's already a done deal according to what we just read. It is, in fact, a reality for us. But here's the truth. You and I, as Christians, as believers, we need to live into that. We can ignore what he died to do, but I don't think that's God's best. And so here's why I'm telling you all of this. Because if you're a Christian pastor in Jefferson County, Missouri, we're inviting you to be a part of a preaching initiative this fall, October 2 and 9. We're inviting you to preach about biblical unity on those 2 Sundays. October 2 about biblical unity within your congregation. October 9, biblical unity on a larger scale. You might remember that over a year ago, we did another preaching initiative in February of 2021, where we preached about biblical marriage and family. Almost 40 different churches, Christian churches from across Jefferson County took part in that. We're hoping to see even higher number this time, talking about biblical unity. October 2 and 9, biblical unity within your congregation, biblical unity on a larger scale. We're hoping that you're going to join with us on this preaching initiative. Will you join us?